Actually, because I was lost on thinking about sushi. Actually, I can't. The thought of being amongst people in a restaurant. I'm not sure I would want to be around where you are, where you're just sort of willy-nilly running around, hugging people and kissing people. But maybe it'll come to that. I don't know. Maybe we'll be in that situation. We'll be so delighted to be back in public. We'll just be random acts of loving kindness. Um, but I was thinking of of being when I've been to Japan a few times and had some amazing raw fish. Actually, if I'm honest, squid included. But the and I remember once being presented with something that was as delicate as moose, and by which I mean moose the substance, not moose the animal. And I was and I tasted it, and it was absolutely exquisite. And it was only a tiny amount, and I asked what it was, and they said anko, which I took me a while to translate. Turns out it was the raw liver of the anglerfish, which I was quite stunned by, to be honest. It was an amazing taste, but the thought of the anglerfish, which is probably the deepest creature that I could possibly think of ever catching, and they decided to eat its liver. Anyway, it was very, very nice. Sorry for the vegetarians out there, but the other most amazing thing I had was persimmon, the persimmon fruit. And when it's still on the branch, they inject it with sake, with rice wine, and then they leave it on the branch till it ripens, and it ripens almost purple. And then they pluck them down, they peel them and eat them. That was the most incredible thing I've ever eaten. And I remember tasting it for the first time. Emily and I had gone up into the north, to the northeast, to the prefecture of Fukushima. And this was about 4 years after the tsunami and after the Daiichi plant explosion. And people were living a very difficult reality there. They weren't being given all of the information about what was safe and what wasn't safe. Sounds a little familiar now. But they were living with this shadow over their area and over their lives, really, and nobody quite knew what to do for the best. Some people would move. Quite a lot of people moved away, particularly with small children. But a lot of people chose to stay. And we met a woman called Sechko, and she ran a small little shop, and we went to visit her. I was doing storytelling, well, we were doing a storytelling performance, and she came to it, and she had lots of stories. She was she had a love for the folklore of Fukushima. Anyway, she invited us to her shop the next day, and we sat in the shop. It was pretty cold, I remember, and she was wrapped up really warm, and she peeled this persimmon that had been injected with rice wine and fed it to us, and it was quite extraordinary. And I remember asking her how did they live with this shadow? How did it feel to live there? And as she peeled the fruit and she passed me it, and I think it felt like almost at the moment I put it into my mouth, she just said, we know what we need and we know how to make ourselves happy. And I thought it was such an extraordinary moment, really, to recognize what they were going through. So the story that she told me there was the story of a young fisherman by the name of Urashima Taro. Now, Urashima Taro had a small house and a wife and a small child, and every day he'd go out fishing. But one day, as he was walking along the shore, he saw children, and they were beating a turtle that had been washed up on the shore, and they had sticks, and they were beating it and taking it in turns to climb up on its back. Well, Urashima had never seen anything so disrespectful and awful, and he went to them. He said, leave it alone, leave it alone, leave it alone. They said, we caught it. It's ours to do with what we want. He said, I'll tell you what, if that's the way you feel about it, I'll buy it from you. So he paid the children money for them to leave the turtle alone, and then he turned the beast and put it back into the water, and off it swam. Well, the next day he was out on his boat out across the water when all of a sudden he heard his name being spoken. It was coming to him across the waves. a beautiful sound, Urashima, Urashima. And he looked, and out across the water he saw walking towards him a beautiful woman. Her long black hair breaking over her shoulders, her kimono flowing in the breeze. She was walking across the surface of the water. When he saw her, he was terrified. He got down on his knees in his boat and he begged for mercy. "Please, kami of the sea, do not harm me." She said, "I come without any intention of harm. Urashima, my father is the dragon god of the sea, and he wishes to speak with you. Come." And she reached out a hand to him, and he took her hand, and he stepped out of the boat. And for a while, Urashima walked with the woman across the surface of the water until slowly they began to sink. Down amongst the waves they went, down and down and down, deeper and deeper, until they came to the palace of the dragon god of the sea. And the woman, she led Urashima to the dragon god, and he bowed low before him. And the dragon god of the sea spoke, "Urashima, you showed great kindness to that turtle. I wish to repay you. I repay you with hospitality. Stay and live here with us in this palace beneath the sea." And Urashima looked around and saw such wonder. He agreed to stay for a while. He bowed low and accepted the gift. So Urashima spent his time down there in the palace of the dragon god of the sea. But of course, it wasn't long before he longed to see his wife and his child again. And he spoke to the daughter of the dragon god of the sea and asked if he may leave. She said, "Please don't go." He said, "I must. My family, I long for them." She understood. "Then take a gift." And she led him to a table, and there it was covered with jewels, covered with many wonderful things. But one thing caught his eye, a small little box made of shell. He said, "That, I wish to take that." She said, "Please, Urashima, take anything, not the box, take anything." He said, "But that is what I wish for." She said, "Then take it, but I beg you, don't open it." And he took the little shell box. And he bowed low, and it wasn't long before he was rising up through the water, rising like a bubble until he burst from the surface, gasped for air, climbed into his boat, and made his way back home. When he stepped from the boat finally onto the shore and walked to where his house was, there was nothing but ruin. The house was broken and rotten. There was no one there. He called and called and called, but heard no reply. He went down to the shore and looked and saw no one familiar until he met an old man, and he said, "Please tell me, what happened to the house? What happened to my wife and my child?" The old man scratched his head. He said, "Are you talking about the fisherman's hut that was there? Of the young fisherman Urashima? He went out into the water a long time ago. They tell stories of Urashima Taro. But that, my friend, was 900 years ago." Urashima realized then how much time had passed in the time he had spent beneath the surface in the dragon god of the sea's palace. And as he walked along the shore, he remembered the little box. He picked it up, lifted the lid, and a small wisp of smoke curled up. And as he looked at it, he felt an ache in his neck and an ache in his back, and he looked at his hands. And in the time it takes for me to tell you, 900 years of age came upon Urashima Taro. 900 years in the time it takes for 3 waves to break on the shore. And as an old man, he broke down on his knees, he broke to the ground, and as his last breath left him, all he could hear across the water was Urashima, Urashima, Urashima.